Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Gallowgateshots podcast and YouTube channel. Back with another match reaction. It seems like these match reactions are turning to the same sort of debate which we're having every single week at the moment. But I am your host today, Kris, joined by Scott, Joe, and Iain. Boys, we'll dive straight into it. Scott, I'll come to you first of all. The only really shock which going into the game was the late news of Callum Wilson not being in attendance at all. Not just not in the starting 11, but not even making the bench. Eddie Howe's came out and said that it's an issue with his cough, I believe it is. It's not serious, but serious enough for him to miss the game. Once again, Scott, we are back in the situation where Callum Wilson isn't fit enough to be starting games. Is this a worry now with the transfer window closed and gone at this moment in time?
If we hadn't got rid of Chris Wood, it probably wouldn't have been. But the fact that Chris Wood went pretty late on and we didn't replace him, you could almost, predict that this was going to happen. It happened sooner than probably anyone would have liked. But I think, I know Eddie Howe in the past when he spoke about injuries has been, playing them down when they're a bit more serious, like
Isak, a barefaced liar. Sort of I think is what you're aiming for, Scott.
But I think for me, the fact that it didn't come up in his press conference, the fact that it was out of the blue, and it's just one of those things, I think it's more precautionary. He's resting him because we've got an important game coming up in 2 weeks, and you'd rather have him for that, even if it's for 20 minutes, even if it's for for 45 minutes, than not have him at all. That's how I would look at it. Rest him. We've got Isak who can come in. And I think, was it Miley who came on? The youngster. Well, he didn't come on, but came into the bench. Yeah. Who I haven't seen or heard much of. So he was quite a shock to see, because I would have thought maybe he's one of the better known youngsters would have came in to the fray. I can't remember who got loaned out though in January, so I don't know who's left. But yeah, I think it's precautionary. I don't think there's too much need to panic just yet, and we'll probably find out a lot more this week.
It is a side of depleted squad though, isn't it? When you're looking at youngsters, 15, 16-year-old lads getting a spot on the bench, that's what you're looking at. And that's a worry. That's a worry. And that was before a ball had even been kicked. We'll get on to even more serious issues coming up. Joe, the game itself, it was pretty, I'm going to say nothing game in regards to nothing really happened throughout it. Newcastle looked very, very sluggish at times, very poor on the ball, gave the ball away very easily, and that was throughout. Are you surprised by that? Or is it something which, over the last couple of weeks, once again, like we just mentioned, being concerned about Callum Wilson, are you concerned about how we are turning up for these games at this moment in time?
I'm not concerned with the application. I'm concerned with the fact that we are 1 or 2 injuries away from looking like a completely different team. Bruno's creativity was a massive miss. It was a miss against West Ham, and it was a miss against Bournemouth. And we like to think that we're a team with 14 or 15 first-team players that are capable of going in and doing a really good job. And to be fair, they all they'll have strengths that they bring to the side. The problem is you take out a little bit of creativity and we do struggle. It was evident in the midfield. We were overloading the right-hand side again, trying to create chances through crosses, but then we didn't have the personnel in the box to really finish those crosses off. Alan Saint-Maximin was doing some really good work on the left-hand side, trying to drill some balls in, but then there was no one there to meet it. And that's a major issue. So the application itself I wouldn't say it was a problem. For the most part, yeah, okay, we were a little bit sloppy at times, some wayward passes. It wasn't up to our usual standards, but I don't think it was anything to do with a lack of effort. It was just an off day for most of the team, to be quite honest.
Ian, just what Joe's mentioned there, when we're missing Bruno, this has happened. I think we're yet to win a Premier League game where Bruno hasn't featured. It's evident that he is basically the talisman in this team right now, isn't it?
Looking at the stats, because I've seen it this morning, I think we've played 5 without him this season and not won one, like you said. And I don't necessarily think we're a one-man team by any means. You look at sort of earlier on in the season, goals and chances were coming from all over. but I just feel he has that sort of that extra level of creativity and sort of drive to get with forward. I thought a lot of the time yesterday, when the midfield were getting on the ball, they looked a little bit sort of devoid of an idea of where to go, or even when it was getting a bit panicky. We've seen time and time before Bruno gets on the ball and he's almost like a common presence, even if it's sort of in and around our box. Whereas I thought yesterday, a lot of it, well, not a lot of the time, but some of the time, it was just panic stations and punt it long, or just sort of play it out to the wings to see what happens over there. But you can tell we're missing Bruno. And like sort of, like Joe's just touched on there, and what you've touched on, it's a depleted squad. I thought that against West Ham as well. We're only missing sort of Isak and Bruno. And then you look at the bench and you've got, other than Gordon, you didn't really look to have any game changers, which, granted, after 2 weeks' time, it's literally only the league that we've got to carry on. But where we see ourselves, and I know we are, like I say, at the minute, well ahead of schedule, but next season, if you bring European football into that, you're going to need another, I'd say, 6-7 bodies in at least to have a decent enough squad. To
a decent standard as well, decent players that you're bringing in. Scott, I've got one person that I'm going to blame for conceding that first goal, and it is you. Because last week, I think you said that this is we need to work on this in the training field because we're conceding silly goals. And I think we correctly said, well, we've already conceded twice to that sort of thing. We went and done it again. So another set piece, which just tears out that back four really apart. And it was, once again, we said this last week, the West Ham game, that was a shocking defending. This week, it was even worse.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the height we've got in that box for set pieces, we should be dealing with that. And I don't know what it is with, tall players not being able to jump very high. I don't know why that's a problem, but you see it time and time and again when we're getting beat in the air, first man's getting the flick on, and then it's just, like I say, turns into quite a messy tap in almost. There wasn't much to it. You couldn't really see there was a goal coming, and then that happened. I don't think it's my fault. I think that's a bit harsh. But, if anything, I need a job because I've pointed it out last week. It's happened again. There's a weakness. I don't think it's a cause for concern just yet because, like you said, I think it's only been 3. But it's still been 3 goals. We've only conceded, 14 now, I think it is, or 13. So, there's not many goals coming in against us, but the ones that are, they're not great.
There's at times, Joe, where this season, I don't want to be too harsh on the defence because the defence has been unbelievable. It's 17 games unbeaten now for Newcastle United. But there's times, once again, in that game where we're getting caught in silly positions. There's one which stands out in my mind, and it was towards the end of the game where I think Botman is challenged on the edge of the box and he goes down. Then Dan Burn just lets that ball roll across him. And then Bournemouth are just on the attack straight away. It's becoming quite sloppy at times. Do you think it's anything to do with complacency slipping in, or is it just a bad run of games for everybody?
No, I don't think it's complacency. It was a very, like you just said, it was very uncharacteristic of what we're used to seeing with that defence. Dan Burn, I'll be completely honest, that was the worst game I've seen him play for us this season comfortably. I'm a big fan of Dan Burn. I don't want to slate him too much. Like you say, this defence has done absolute heroics for us this season. But we have to call a spade a spade. That across that back four, Trippier may be exempt from that. That was the worst performance that we've seen. And let's be honest, I know we just spoke about how we're only conceding silly goals. Bournemouth should and could have had at least 2, maybe 3. Yeah. It's been one of them rare games. Most of the games that we've drawn, we've looked at it in retrospect and said, okay, we were still the better team. At the end of the day, we definitely mitigated the amount of chances that the opposition had. This time, however, this was a bit of a rare game where really the opposition were the ones who had most of the chances. They were the ones who had more clear-cut opportunities. And yeah, it's a bit of a foreign concept to what we're seeing. Going to the Dan Burn incident, that specific one you mentioned there, I've got no idea what he was doing there because, Botman went down and then he took just such a heavy touch. Yeah. Completely unaware of the fact that he was getting closed down. And I don't know whether him flailing his arms up in the air was to say, "Oh, why hasn't the game been stopped because of the Botman being down," or whether it was just his own annoyance as to what's happened. But complete lapse of concentration. I don't think it's much cause for concern in the long run, given the track record that this team has. But it was definitely an off day for everyone. Wayward passes as well. You saw the likes of Fabian Schär booting the ball up long, especially in the first half, trying to find the likes of Isak in that, and it just wasn't really working. It was almost completely bypassing midfield a lot of the time. So yeah, it's I want to put it down as just a bad day at the office for everyone, and hopefully that's all it is. Like I say, it was not something that is consistent or at least characteristic of what we're used to seeing. So it could just be one of those.
I think it's worth saying, like you mentioned there, that it is a bad day at the office. Indeed, we're lucky that this bad day came against somebody who is in the likes of a relegation scrap, because if that was one of the top teams, they could have done some damage with how easily we were dispossessed at times and how sloppy we were, especially at the back, and lack of control across everywhere on that field. And I'm not taking anything away from Bournemouth, because Bournemouth played really well. They did. They high press on us, similar to what we do to teams. And I think it was
almost the opposite.
Yeah,
it was almost the complete opposite of what we're used to seeing. Like, Bournemouth were the ones who were pressing us, and we were the ones who couldn't string passes together. Normally, that's us, like you just said. Normally, that's us doing that to teams. It was so weird being on the other side of that and us struggling to cope with it as well.
I think the thing that changed the game around slightly, Ian, was, and I'm looking at this as a glass half full and hoping that this injury to Willock isn't serious, because what Eddie Howe said after the game and in the press conference is that it does look a bit concerning with Willock. We don't know what it is, hamstring injury it looks like, and might be a few weeks on the sideline minimum. But that's when the game changed. Gordon came on, and I thought at that point we started to control things a little better.
Yeah, we did. As much as Willock, because I don't want to sit and slate players, but as much as Willock offers you sort of running and there's a little bit of dynamism in terms of he can play left and swap with Joe Linton, for me, his end product hasn't been as good as what we have seen it. And I think people have touched on previous that sort of Saint-Maximin, everyone gets on Saint-Maximin's back for his end product. I think Joe Willock, a few times this season, has had games where all he's done is ran. But like you say, when that change came on, I think Gordon, being the second most expensive signing, has a point to prove. He wants to get in the first team, he wants to start. So I thought that was good. It was a good injection of trying to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. And I'm not too sure, but at times I've seen him play like a number 10 role with Saint-Maximin, and they were switching, which did help. And obviously there was the link of play, which I'm sure you'll come to, on the left-hand side to start with, that led to our goal. So it did change the game, but I just thought, when we had the ball and teams, and I've seen it quite a few times this season, when teams are sitting, we just don't look like we know how to break them down. It seems like at times we're trying to be too intricate, and we're just waiting literally until there's a free opportunity to have a shot at goal. We weren't really taking any chances. And incidentally, the goal comes from having a shot sort of from outside the box when it's opened up that half a yard, and then following the rebound. But I don't know what it is at the minute. We don't seem to be firing on all cylinders, where previously we were blowing teams away. And I'm not stupid. I know that you're not going to have that every game, every season. But when you look at the opposition yesterday, I mean, I think they've scored one goal and got 1 point or something since November. And I get, obviously, it's going to be still a difficult game because they're fighting for survival. But where we are as a club, even if you take chasing Europe out of it, I still feel that we were better than what we showed yesterday, to be honest. Yeah,
I fully agree. Scott, there's one player which I want to focus on. I don't want to focus on him too much because it becomes a habit where we start doing this. And I know social media isn't the area which we should be looking at in regards to fans' opinion and things like that, because it can get blown out of proportion. A few tweets last night saying, once again, Saint-Maximin blew his chance. He'd done nothing all game. And I'm pretty on the fence with Maxi. And I'll openly admit that I don't fall either side, because at this moment in time, apparently the fan base has to either dislike him or overly praise him, which I just don't get whatsoever. Maxi has been criticised in the past for not grafting enough. He grafted to keep that ball in play massively, something which we've always criticised him for previously. So that's something which he did. He then picks the ball up and drives and plays an absolute perfect ball in for Longstaff. And Longstaff's unlucky not to score that goal. Keep a great save. Comes out to Almiron. Almiron puts the ball in the back of the net. Great play all around. That comes from Maxi. How are we at the point now where he does this in a game and there's still fans' opinions saying he's done nothing whatsoever?
Good question. I don't know is the answer to that. I don't know how you come to that conclusion, because if you come to that conclusion yesterday about Alan Saint-Maximin, then you've got to come to that conclusion about Sven Botman. You've got to come to that conclusion about, to an extent, Isak, Cher, Miggy Almiron, even though he got the goal, he didn't do much else. So it's a weird criticism, because, like you said, the ball that went over to the left was for Burn, and it was way too far away from Burn, and Maxi had to chase back, keep the ball in. It then fell to Burn, goes to Gordon. Gordon does. I haven't seen it from all angles, but it seems like he does a nice little flick and takes two players out to get the ball back to Maxi. And then, like I say, he drives in, he finds Longstaff. I thought Longstaff's first touch was a little poor, which is probably why he didn't get the shot away that he wanted to. It seemed to go just a little bit past his left foot. But he got the shot away, which, he's openly spoken about, just hit it. And that's what he did. Keeper saves it, falls to Miggy, and it's a tidy finish. Actually,
great finish by Miggy.
Keeper. But to go back on the criticism about Saint-Maximin, I feel like at the moment he's the scapegoat. He's the one that's in the spotlight, and he could have the best game of his life and there'll still be people criticizing him. And he could have the worst game of his life and there'll be people criticizing him. And when he does kind of, it wasn't bad performance, it wasn't an outstanding performance, he's going to get criticism as well. I think unless he sets the league alight, people are going to criticize him. I think Kieran Dyer called him a maverick in the punditry. Some people love that, some people don't. I mean, Tino Asprilla was a very, very similar player where you'd have flashes of brilliance and then he'd frustrate you. Well, the same with, Ben Arthur. It just seems to be there's always one that we kind of isolate and just want to pick apart all the time. And it's a weird thing to do as a fan base, because you should be encouraging your players. You should be getting behind them. I don't know. In the days of social media, I don't think people realize that players will be seeing this and players will be, it'll be affecting them on the pitch. Are they right to criticize them? Probably, but maybe it's not to as a personal level as some people are getting on social media, because it's getting a bit ridiculous. But yeah, it's for me. I thought he was, we weren't a great team yesterday, but he was one of our better players. That doesn't mean he was playing a 10. He was, maybe he's a 6 in a field of 5s and 4s.
And so sometimes, Joe, it takes a player like Maxi to try new things, and it's not always going to work. He is going to run into a wall of players sometimes. He is going to get tackled and dispossessed. But we need somebody trying new things when we're struggling to break teams down like we have done with Bournemouth. Every single time that we've played them this season, we've struggled to break them down.
Absolutely.
But I think I don't want this to come across as if, like I said, we're overly praising Maxi. We're not. We're just trying to defend him and say, yes, it probably was an average game for the majority of the players across the field. Let's stop trying to blame one single player.
No. I mean, listen, Maxi, there were a few wayward passes. There were a few times where he tried things and they really didn't come off, and it was the wrong decision to make. And yeah, he didn't have a perfect game, at all. My personal take on this whole sort of situation that's been highlighted around Maxi is that I don't think it would be as big a problem if we were being creative in other parts of the pitch. I think whilst Bruno was out and we seem to be struggling with sort of, I know Miggy scored fine, but in general, he hasn't been quite as he hasn't had quite the look, been quite as productive on the right hand side as we used to see before the World Cup. I think without that creativity in other parts of the field, we then look to Maxi as the talisman, the one who's going
back to the way
you're going to
to
bring
yeah,
that into the team.
similar to the Bruce.
Yeah,
Guys, yeah,
exactly. And when that's not happening, we're kind of taking. I mean, okay, some people. I don't want to speak for a whole fan base, obviously, but I feel like some people might be looking at that and going, "Well, if Maxi's not creating everything that we need to, then they're just kind of taking that all out on him, I think, a little bit." And really, what should be what like you've just said, what we should be doing is looking at the whole team and going, there is a lack of creativity all around. Maxi might be the highlight, the talisman of this whole thing, but he is not the only one who should be creating things. He's trying things on coming off. He's making some wrong decisions at times. Fine, but like you say, at least he's trying. It was exactly the same thing with Bournemouth at home, where we struggled to break them down. We didn't have them then, and I'm pretty sure fans probably would have called for him to, hoping that he was in the side then, saying, "Oh well, if Maxi was in, maybe he would have done something." Yeah, it's one of those where it's a whole team effort, and it's a problem all round. And yeah, I think we just need to understand that I think he did well with Gordon. I like to see a little bit more of them two together. I think obviously they linked up well for the goal. But yeah, I mean that's my personal take on it. I just think that there are a lot of issues, not major problems, but issues that we need to work out. And I don't think Maxi is head and shoulders above everyone else and everything else that we need to look at.
Yeah. But one of the things I want to mention just before we call an end to this one, Ian, is Kieran Trippier saving our horses from a defeat. Goal line clearance. Despite Bournemouth trying the hardest to get the referee to go against everything which is in place in regards to technology and his watch not beeping, but once again would just get torn apart so easily for them. And Solanke, do you think that he tries to be too clever with the flick rather than just absolutely smashing that as hard as he can?
I think so. I think if I'm not I could be wrong, but I think that stemmed from the Dan Burn incident, where obviously Botman's foul. What I genuinely thought, like what Joe was saying before, he took a heavy touch and then he's almost stopped and like apologized to someone or like had a go at someone, not realizing that the game's still going on. Because I think the ball went back to Nick Pope and his clearance was a bit shoddy as well. But in terms of Trippier, obviously, that's why he is where he is. That's why he's captain. He has a presence about him. He has a leadership. He knew where to be. But to answer your question with Solanke, I think even the commentator said if he just puts his foot through that, he buries it. Where, he, like you say, he's trying to be too clever. And even the slow motion replays, I think Trippier's done.
Can we just take a second as well, just to appreciate how calm Trippier is in that moment as well? He controls it and he's playing with it just on the edge of the box.
Yeah, he's
on the line. Sorry, not the edge of the box.
Yeah, his footwork to sort himself out and get rid of that. So I think he stops it with his right, and then it looks like it's going to roll back, and to sort his feet out and clear that is absolutely phenomenal. But it's just not. Is it concerning? It's a little bit disheartening that you've relied on that against a team that are second bottom that have picked up a point since November or whenever. But yeah, I thought Trippier, he done exceptionally well there, and I think Nick Pope as well in the first half. The save from Solanke, his header. Yeah, I thought that was a very, very good save as well. So it's not like you were saying, it's not like they've sort of snuck a goal. They had the better of the chances, and to be honest, I don't really remember their keeper having to make any difficult saves. There was one that he spilt where then Gordon, I think it got deflected wide.
I think Gordon, yeah.
Yeah, from a Saint-Maximin shot, possibly.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
Other than that, I can't really remember us testing the keeper. Again, similar to last week. And I know we've touched on, obviously, we've been creating chances, we just couldn't score. I think the last 2 weeks are a little bit concerning because I don't think we've actually tested a keeper or made a keeper work. But I don't want to be negative. I want to be positive. I just felt like, given obviously in 2 weeks' time is a cup final, and given the opposition that we've had sort of in that run, we've had a great chance to build some momentum to go in. And now if you're looking at the Liverpool game, yes, we've not lost. We've drawn the last 2 Premier League games, could possibly last 3, Palace, Bournemouth and West Ham. If you lose that Liverpool game, that is a massive, massive blow given what you could have had in the run-up to a final.
Yeah. Scott, I think if we're going to take positives from the game, okay, which I feel as if we should be, because at the end of the day, it's still an unbeaten run. It's 17 games unbeaten now, and it's a point away from home. I know you're looking at league positions, and you're a little bit unhappy with that you're only getting a point. But if you look at the game overall, I think we could have went and left with 0 points, absolutely nothing, and we couldn't be unhappy with that because of the performance. I think normally would look at games and think that's a couple of points drop there. That we gained a point out of that situation because it was a bad day at the office.
Yeah, and I mean this time last season we probably would have took that point and been extremely happy with it. Although this time last season we probably would have lost a game like that because it would have been a lot worse. So, there's good things and bad things to take from the game. Like you said, 17 undefeated. That's an outstanding achievement. If this is our blip, then fine. Like, we're not losing games. Great. If we lost those last 3 games, there'd be a totally different atmosphere. This would be a totally different podcast. It would be completely different going through. So, we've got 3 points from 3 games. Is that great? Not really. Is it bad? No. It's 3 points on the board. We're still in 4th with a game in hand and a couple of points ahead of Tottenham as well.
Do you think that's what fans are looking at, though, Scott? Do you think it's because the likes of Spurs haven't capitalised on their chance and we're failing to do the same, where obviously we can get a bit of breathing space and we're just not taking those chances at the moment?
I think it takes the pressure off. I think, from the players' point of view, if the teams around us were picking up 3 points every week and we weren't, and we were dropping down that table quite quickly, then I think, from a player's standpoint, that maybe is, gets you a bit more in kind of the mentals and how you approach the next game. From a fan base, you want to win every game, right? You want to get 3 points every single week. We're brimming with confidence from a fan base and a player base, given what we're doing this season. And, I think there's a chance that confidence turns into a bit of arrogance, where we just expect to win, and then you get a game like that, and you think, oh, hang on a minute, yeah, actually, this is the Premier League, right? You cannot just go out in every game and expect 3 points and expect it to perform outstanding every week. We're going to Liverpool. I think that'll be a completely different game because they'll attack us. Maybe it's a bit better than Bournemouth did. We'll have to be on my A game for that. And I think if there's any test greater than going into that Man U game, it's playing against Liverpool the week before, because that'll get the players ready to be like, okay, this is what a so-called Big Six team is going to play against us. We've got another one next week, and then we've got another one the week after with Man City. These players need to get their act together in terms of what's going to come very, very quickly. And I think the Liverpool game will be a good primer for the Man U game, which will be a good primer for the Man City game. And I think, we could be sitting here 3 weeks with a cup and, six more points, and we've beaten 3 of the best teams in the country on paper.
So just to finish, I know we will be doing a match preview for the Liverpool game. We'll be doing that during the week. But Joe, just to wrap this one up. So Liverpool come to St James's Park. It's another 5:30 kickoff. Another one under the floodlights. Haven't been doing too well when it's been shown on Sky. Will Eddie Howe go full strength?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. He speaks every press conference that they always, journalists always try and get a little bit out of him. Oh, especially the cup final recently, they'll say, oh, you got one eye on the cup final. You're thinking about this. Have you tried to, plan with one eye on this? Every single time he's saying, nope, next game is the only thing he focuses on. When we beat Southampton to get through to the final, he said, as soon as my head hit the pillow, I started thinking about West Ham. He only and that is that's a complete correct approach that he needs to make in what he has been making. It's what's been such a big factor in our turnaround as a club in the results on the pitch. It's about taking those little micro steps to achieve what is a wider goal, and that's the mindset and the philosophy that Eddie Howe approaches his management with. He has to go full strength. There's no excuse not to. I know what you're saying. We've got 3, potentially 4 injuries that have come away from this weekend. It's not great. It's really not good. But you can't take your eye off the ball on any competition. We're fighting for top 4. We're fighting for European spots. Players need to be sharp and match fit. If we had like an FA Cup game midweek, which I believe Man United have, it's either that or the week after. They have a midweek game. If we're in Man United's position and that was the case, maybe you could argue that.
I think Man United
however,
play Barcelona just before that cup final.
League,
Is it Barcelona? Yeah, it's an FA Cup game the midweek
after against West Ham, I think.
So they got a midweek game. That's a complete different kettle of fish. That's where, that's down to Eric Ten Hag and his stuff. This isn't a Man United podcast, but we have an entire week between the games, and we need to keep the players sharp, focused, and we have Champions League qualification to push for. So we need to go full strength. And I'm confident that Eddie Howe will look at this game and give the players an absolute bollocking, because he looked raging.
Furious, didn't
he? Looked raging. And I'm not surprised, because that was below the standards that he sets those players.
I've got two caveats at end on this one. So first one, I want to say that I've seen this question a lot on social media, and it's been answered a lot on social media. If Joe Linton gets a yellow card, he does not miss the final.
No, doesn't.
Okay, he does not miss the final.
Only if they get a red card.
Red card.
Yeah, a straight red. I think even 2 yellows doesn't count. It has to be a straight red.
So I've seen that loads, absolutely loads in the last 24 hours. And finally, Don Goodman is one of the worst commentators I have ever heard. Honestly, the bitterness coming from that bloke's mouth was second to none. It was
He's always
shocking.
been like that, though. Like, literally since I remember. Like,
did he have a spell at Sunderland?
Yeah. He played for Wolves and Sunderland, and like every time he died, not that fucking arsehole commenting again. It literally any jibe, like even if it's like not even relevant, he'll try and get in. Like, I just kind of stand him as a co-commentator.
It's okay for us to criticize our team, Don. Not you, mate. Not you.
I mean, it's okay for him to criticize it if he had a valid point, but he just spites. Shite. Like, he doesn't even. I'm not going to get angry because it's a Sunday and I want to enjoy my Sunday.
But don't get angry on Sundays.
I think we're having that with a lot of pundits though recently, aren't we? Like, not just commentators, but pundits as well. Just seem to be plucking ideas out of the thin air that just don't make any sense.
You go into this game, right? You go into it and you look in the studio. You've got Dyer and Souness who just sit and slag Maxi off for 10 minutes, then call he's like a dodgy signing. Like, no idea what they were playing at. Then obviously the commentating starts. Then you've got Don Goodman there as well. So it wasn't a great day for us in the eyes and the voices of Sky. But we'll move on. Hopefully next week will be a bit better. Thanks, boys, for joining.
May I have one last thing?
Of course you can, mate.
Did you notice that Sven Botman, that was his first yellow card this season?
Was it really?
It was for I said it, which I think is insane. And also, I've got no idea what it was for, because the lad went down like a sack of potatoes.
He pushed him, didn't he? And then he just hit the deck.
It was nothing.
Yeah,
I'm surprised he got it. But first yellow.
At first I thought the Bournemouth player was getting a yellow card for diving. I thought that was.
That's what I thought.
That's what I thought.
I thought that. Yeah.
But one yellow card for Botman all season.
Don Goodman also wanted Joe Linton to get sent off, like throughout the game. He done a stupid thing later on where Don Goodman started going, he dove in like with a challenge. Nowhere near the player whatsoever, mind. But he was trying his hardest.
Yeah, trying his hardest. Didn't he try to get the ball?
You got to be careful with that. It's like he was fine.
Yeah.
But once again, but don't get angry on a Sunday.
Oh, we're not angry on Sunday.
Thanks, boys. Been a pleasure as always. Hopefully, fingers crossed, next week is a bit better performance. Even if it's the same result, we'll want a decent performance going into that cup final game. If you are enjoying content like this, you can subscribe to the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel. If you want to give a little bit extra back, it's $2.99 a month. Become a member. You get early access to content as well as access to the Telegram group. And if you don't want to do either of those, just like the video. That's enough for us. Thank yous, and we shall see you Monday night. Always Smiling Faces podcast is back. See you later.
Bye, everyone.